अत्र भारतदेशे एव जनिमाप्य बहोः कालात् अत्रत्यां स्थितिम् अनुभूय अत्र एव अधीत्य पुनः अमेरिकादेशं गताः ते प्रसिद्धे यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ सैन फ्रांसिस्को इत्याख्ये महाविद्यालये तत्र मीडिया स्टडीज विभागे प्रोफेसर रूपेण कार्यरताः सन्ति। तेषाम् अत्र आह्वाने किं निमित्तम् इत्युक्तौ तेषाम् अस्मदीय परिभाषा ज्ञानमेव। यथा ते तद्विषये स्वकीयं पाण्डित्यम् आवहन्ति तद्वत् भारतीय संस्कृति विषये भारतीय दर्शनानां विषयेपि तेषां तत्र अतीव आसक्तिः प्रीतिः तदनुसारेण आसक्तिप्रीतिभ्यां किमपि न भवति, युद्धकौशलं भवेत्, तदा एव अस्मदीयं कार्यं सिद्ध्यति। एतैः रीआर्मिंग हिंदुइज्म इति विषये तत्र भारतीय शास्त्राणां पुनरुत्थान विषये नूतनः एकः प्रबन्धः एव विरचितः अस्ति। बहु कालात् तत्र यथा भारतीय शास्त्राणां पुनरुत्थानं भवति तदर्थं महान् प्रयासः एतैः तत्र विधीयमानः अस्ति। तदर्थम् अस्माभिः एते अत्र आहूताः सन्ति। मीडिया स्टडीज इत्युक्तावेव भवद्भिः ज्ञायते तत्र कथं मास कम्युनिकेशन टीवी सिनेमा प्रिंट कम्युनिकेशन इत्यादिषु कीदृशो व्यवहारः भवति, तेषां परिभाषा का भवति, तस्य उपयोगः अस्माभिः कथं करणीयः इति विषये अस्मान् तत्र प्रबोधयितुं ते अत्र समुपस्थिताः सन्ति। तेभ्यः अहं हार्दं स्वागतं तत्र व्याहरामि। अस्मदीयाः सर्वे छात्राः, I introduce all of you to students, and these students are preparing for their PhD. They are in the coursework first year. They are here for the training in different methodology of philosophical research. I welcome all of you students also, and our members of Krishna Bhakti Peetha are also there. Dr. Srinidhi is there, Dr. Gautam is there, and moreover Dr. Professor Juluri's family is here. I welcome Varenya for a 1-minute speech on media studies. He will speak in Sanskrit now.
I can show you some pictures because media is all these days, especially media is so much about visual medium. This Indriyam in particular, our eyes. So I brought a lot of nice examples. Let us see if I can write halfway through the talk or something. I'll just get us started. And we have about 1 hour.
Yes, now
45
minutes and
15 minutes questions. Perfect. Wonderful. So my talk is titled Media Studies and Philosophy. And as Varenya said, I teach media studies. And my hope in giving this talk is that I can convey to you the kind of research that is being done in the field of media studies and social sciences today, particularly in Western universities, which is also many modern Indian universities. Talk a little about the philosophical assumptions behind them, and then critique what is wrong with this Western approach to society, in the social sciences, and more importantly, also talk about what is wrong with media. Acharya Pandurangi shared with me a paper he wrote a few years ago. It was called Asatyam Eva Jayate. So this is the land of Satyam Eva Jayate, where our ancestors for generation after generation lived by Satyam Eva Jayate. And in just 3-4 generations, Asatyam is becoming Jayate. Forgive my Sanskrit grammar, I don't know anything. He keeps trying to teach me, but I'm a very bad language learner. So hopefully he will learn in your company, and we will all learn together today. Okay, so I will share a few things. So I'll start with a quick example. I don't know if you can see this, but anyway, this is just a picture from a song that was very popular in the 1990s. I don't know if you can recognize. Front rows. Okay, this is the song Made in India by Alisha Chinay. So, I wrote my PhD dissertation on music television in India in the 1990s, which was, a time of very quick and sudden change in India, because till then we only had Doordarshan, and suddenly all Star TV and all the foreign channels came, and the society and culture started changing very quickly. So I did some research on Made in India, and the reason I'm mentioning that is you are all philosophers. You are studying Indian Sanskrit and philosophy. So my object of study is something very, very light and entertaining, which is media. But all the same, I'm hoping we can find some common ground here. So my goals today are twofold. One, I want to convey what is media studies, and second, I want to suggest that it is very important for scholars of Sanskritam and Indian knowledge systems to understand media more, so that your work is more intelligible to young people in particular. So, what is media studies? I'm just curious. Have any of you taken any classes in media studies or journalism? Where, Mahmood?
Christ University.
In journalism?
Yeah, no, I've done masters and bachelors in media communication studies. So,
Wonderful. Very, very happy to hear that. And anyone else? All right. So, okay. So, in a way, I think all of us are by default, students of the media today, because we are inundated with so much media, so much information. Okay? Even when you want to sit silently, your phone will send you a notification. And then it can be anything. It can be something important which makes you happy. It could be something unimportant which makes you happy, like somebody clicking like on that photo you put on Instagram. No one saw till now. Finally, somebody clicked like. And then you go and see. Then it turns out to be a bot. Then you are sad. So every minute to every second, our emotions are going through roller coaster in media age. Right? So in a way, all of us are confronted with this question: what to believe in media? How to use it for good instead of for destruction? So a lot of my research actually looks at how media is being used as a tool for destructiveness, for control, for propaganda, for manipulation, for spreading hatred and lies. And particularly those of us who are born into this tradition of Sanatana Dharma, we are probably the biggest targets of propaganda ever done in humanity. I am writing a book on propaganda. I am studying the history very seriously. And I am telling you this not to exaggerate, because many cultures around the world were targeted, for the last 1,000 years or so. Most cultures lost that continuity with their ancestors. We still haven't. Some of it is left. And those of you in this room, in this very sacred and important institution, you have a very, very important role to play. For whom? How do I even describe it? Our netas will say for the nation, for development, vikas. That may be. I will tell you, it is for our gods. Because there is nothing bigger than them. The only reason we are still here, and even though I am speaking this Paschatya Bhasha, I am still having the taste, the sensibilities to admire what is happening in this institution. I still have the some little sense that what you all are going to achieve is extremely important. Okay, not only to India, but also to the whole world. As somebody who's lived and taught in America for 30 years, Americans keep yearning for our wisdom. I live in Berkeley. Okay. So Berkeley, California was one of the birthplaces of the hippie movement in the 1960s. And naturally, Hare Krishna from our ISKCON friends became very popular there. There's a beautiful Krishna temple in Berkeley. So all of these things I'm telling you because the world keeps yearning for something from us. Nobody's coming to our country to see secularism museum, no? So they're coming to see Udupi, they're coming to see our temples, that is what it is. Now, for us, the challenge is, how do we bring these two things together? You have a modern world which likes and sees some things in us and likes it. We have inherited some of it, but then the problem is we are facing a war through media, particularly. TikTok, propaganda. So many things are going on. So, okay, I will come back to what the field is about, and hopefully I've convinced you that media studies is important, and the reality today is we are facing a media war. So broadly, what is media studies? So two kinds of classes. For example, in my university, all the classes fall into one of two categories. Some are production classes, as you know, where they teach you how to make movies and do podcasts, journalism, etc. Others are theory classes. I teach theory classes. I teach a class called Introduction to Media, Media History, Media Theory and Criticism, Indian Cinema, very popular class, Media and Violence. So many of these theory or research classes basically come out of other disciplines like sociology, political science, psychology, and more recently cultural studies. So I'm mentioning this because in a sense, media studies is a new field. Philosophy is a very old and respected field. The Greeks had it, the Chinese had it, we had it, but media studies is fairly new. It started only around the 1920s or so. So anyway, so what do our students do? Many of them work in media, or some of them go to work in other companies, then they do social media, that kind of work. So the broad question is this. So media studies is a field that is in the social sciences in many universities. So it's influenced by methodology in psychology, political science, etc. But at the same time, it is about art, it's about creativity. So there is also a humanities aspect. Okay. So now I will jump into how I kind of teach. Let me try this mic. Okay, I'll try. This is sounding better also, I think. Yeah, that started convincing me I have a cold. And instead of focusing on this beautiful gathering, so it's actually appropriate that this just taught me a lesson. Okay, so technology and the ability of media to keep tricking us all the time. Now, what is media? Anyone?
Communicating of ideas.
Very good. Communication, ideas. But what do you think of? What comes to mind? What icon or app in your phone comes to mind usually when you hear the word media?
WhatsApp.
WhatsApp? Who said WhatsApp? Thank you. Yes. WhatsApp is saving civilization. It is causing a lot of problems and nuisance, but in a very funny way. I recently saw a book, I think authored by Devdas Patnaik, or at least introduced by him, where he was saying WhatsApp is very bad. Don't forward that WhatsApp. Don't trust WhatsApp University. Yes, there's a lot of silly stuff, but there is humanity and hope. So WhatsApp. Anything else?
Mode of communication, I think.
Media is a mode of communication. Very good. My students always tell me I'm old-fashioned when I say Facebook or Twitter. They're all about Instagram and YouTube, yes. Anything else? You also feel free to add.
YouTube is for old people now.
Oh my God, he says YouTube is for old people. All right. So we have a authentic young expert to guide us. So what are people under 15 into? TikTok, yes. TikTok I think is banned in India.
Yes.
Just as well. I must talk about it in a minute. TikTok is destroying America. I mean, October 7th, I was going to talk about it in the second talk, but I'll mention it. One of the most horrifying terrorist attacks in history took place in Israel. And 2 days later, in American universities, American schools, children, are all wearing that scarf and running and saying free Palestine, Hamas, decolonization. After 1,000 people were tortured and murdered in the most frightening way, what has happened to humanity? they did a survey, 50% of people under 35 in America said that attacks in Israel were justified. The next question asked, do you know what all they did, the kind of torture and horrible things they did? They said yes, but still justified. So 50% of youngsters in America no longer believe that violence or murder or torture or other horrible things is a crime. They don't think it's immoral. For them, the world is only oppressors and victims. So, and for that, they say TikTok has played a very big role in misguiding the youth. All right, sorry, I jumped into current affairs, but I'll stick to this. Media. What is media? What does the word actually mean? Have you ever thought about it? What other words does it sound like?
It's a medium to transfer from one point to another.
Medium to transfer could be anything. Very good, like right, a medium of electricity, a medium of heat. So, any other words? So my dictionary told me that the word medium is related to the idea of being in the middle. And now that I've realized, this young man is into linguistics, so he tells me about Proto-Indo-European and language families and little bit, which I'm sure you all know a lot about. So medium, Madhya, I was saying, my mother tongue, I'm saying Madhyalo and Madhyama. I mean, it sounds just like what my mother tongue says, but now in English, a language spoken by English people, which now I have picked up because, you know, they colonized us or whatever. So medium means something is in the middle. So
Limelight.
limelight. That's to be in the limelight. Very nice. It's a wonderful phrase. Yes, be in the limelight. Yeah. So it would be you're right in the middle of the light, the middle of the stage, the middle of the public's attention, the middle of the public's opprobrium and contempt or their adulation. I think in my hotel they're saying the cricket players are coming, so they're all, you know, hustle bustle going on there, you know. So adoration, you know, limelight, great celebrity, all these things. But let us look at this very logically, because I want to tell you something about why, as a media professor and a media historian, I find Sanskrit to be extremely profound and important. You know, the culture of Sanskrit and Sanskrit learning. Simply put, medium means something is in the middle. So then the next question would be the middle of what? Correct? So right now it's very simple. So there is a medium I'm using. You could call that the English medium of the English language, or you could say the medium of the spoken word. Okay? And in the middle, there is a small distance. Okay? That is all. There is a distance, and I'm the source, I'm the speaker. And what is in the middle is that word, that sound, the shabda, which is echoing the physical waves, and you reach it, you are understanding. I'm sure with all your Sanskrit, English sounds very, very silly, but bear with me. My heart is in the Sanskrit place, even though my words are not. Okay? So, we start with this idea. There is a branch of media studies which looks at forms of media communication through the technology. Most famous name is a Canadian scholar in the 60s called Marshall McLuhan, who said the medium is the message. Some of you may have heard that phrase, very famous. So, scholars who look at media technology make us pay attention to each medium, just very basic at a physical level. So, if you start looking at media history, what is the oldest medium in history? Today, the latest is probably TikTok, Twitter, WhatsApp, smartphone. My generation, it was TV. 1978, we got TV for the first time in Hyderabad. Before that, there was no TV. Radio was there. Now, my father and mother, when they were children, they remember the time when radio started in India. My mother used to tell me she remembers the day Mahatma Gandhi was assassinated. We all heard it on the radio. Now, the reason I'm telling you this, media is only about, most media are only about 100 years old. Radio, TV, phones, etc. But communication is much, much older. So what are the different forms of media? I'll tell you that very briefly. The oldest form of communication, the oldest medium is speech. Okay? So if you...
Verbal communication.
Verbal communication, yes. Yes, Shruti. So I'm giving a sort of Western sociology perspective on why the way even Sanskrit is taught and learned by you to this day is so valuable. So think about this. Long, long ago, the only way that you could communicate thousands of years ago, when people were still living in forests or caves, was through the spoken word. There was no medium to store a message outside the body. Maybe a little bit cave paintings, things like that were there. So if you look at the societies that existed at that time, most of the societies were very small, local. People lived in a village or in a tribe in a forest, because most communication had to be face to face. Now, so what I'm trying to say is, a medium is always telling us to consider it is in the middle of something, middle of different people, but it is also a medium across something. So it is across space, across time. So very old societies, in the very old times, what we call oral cultures or oral societies were very small. It was local. You didn't have a global economy at all, not even a national economy maybe. Because most people live their life in their village or with neighboring villages. Now, the thing about such societies is typically elders are valued. Because elders have the most memory, so everyone respects them because they have the most knowledge. There is no knowledge stored anywhere else. Face to face communication. Now, in such societies, because it is the human body, the mind, the mind in particular, which is the oldest medium of communication. That is why memorization, uttering every sound in the way that chants is so important. Now remember, all societies around the world had some tradition, oral traditions. They had their own songs and everything. But few hundred years of colonialism, all that has been wiped out. We still have it somehow. We have the Vedic tradition, which of course they claim, the Aryans invaded and brought to India. I don't know about all that. But the fact is that has existed, other folk cultures, everything is existing still in our land. So, oldest societies are like that. Now, the first medium that was invented, which was outside the human body, was writing, the scripts. So, they say the earlier scripts, whether it is Indus Valley or Egypt or the Middle East and so on. So, that is roughly 10,000 or 5,000 years ago. Now, the moment writing is invented, you see, I'm not saying this caused that. Okay, as philosophers, I'm sure you always think about causality. In social sciences, we don't always say one thing only caused something, but there is a relationship. We associate the beginnings of early kingdoms, right? Egypt, Indus Valley, and all these societies. At the same time, they had scripts. So there was record keeping, and then messages are being stored, which can be taken on tablets or papyrus or whatever. So kingdoms are forming. It reaches its peak during the time of the Roman Empire. Okay? So during the Roman Empire, they have a whole network of horseback riders who are taking messages. So now you have a medium, which is the written word written on papyrus and scrolls, which can be taken on horseback. So the empire spreads. And they say within 3 weeks from the capital, which is Rome, all the way to say Israel or Palestine, whatever they want to call it, North Africa, England, the whole Roman Empire functioned because it had a communication network. And then the very big thing that happens is the birth of Christianity. Because they start to really use the medium of the written word to transform society and psychology in a very deep way. Because their religious belief is that their truth is the only truth, only one God, the old gods have to go. So, there's a great book called The Darkening Age by Catherine Dixie, I forget her name, Dixie. So in The Darkening Age, they talk about how the early Christians destroyed the old Roman religion and the old Greek religion. Also a great movie called Agora. It's about the mathematician Hypatia. So these are also very interesting for you to understand that the history which has taken place, a broader history and also related to communication. So Christianity was responsible for destroying many of the old libraries like in Alexandria, etc. Long before the Khiljis and Nalanda. They did that in Egypt, Greece, all those old things. So you can see what was going on. They erased all the old written memories and they wanted everybody to now follow the new memory they're putting. So that is the history of writing. But writing is now associated with big kingdoms. And then after that, we get to the invention of print. 1450, the Gutenberg printing press in Germany. That also the first book he makes is the Bible. Now the time period from the 1450s till about the 1920s or so, very huge changes around the world. It's called modernity. Now the printing press creates a much larger social organization, the rise of the nation state, then the industrial revolution, all these changes take place. And then the last 150 years are quickly mentioned. So 1850s, the telegraph is invented for the first time. There is no physical medium needed. I mean, there is a wire, of course, but instant communication. Okay? Even with print, you printed a book, you could reach a large audience, but the book has to be physically taken. Once telegraph is invented, immediately time doesn't matter. Then radio. With radio, even the wire is not needed. Then cinema, moving pictures. Early 1900s, the 1920s, 30s, popular radio, 1950s, TV, 1990s, 2000s, internet, computer, smartphone. So you see how each medium has been in the middle of all these changes in how society is organized and lives. This is kind of what I explained. Now we can zoom ahead. A brief history of media studies. Do you recognize the person on the left?
Yes.
Excellent. Have you seen Modern Times?
Yes.
Great Dictator? Perennial movies, very important. You know, sometimes my students, when I ask them, very few of them have heard of Charlie Chaplin. All right. Ready Player One, have any of you seen that? All right. Savvy, very, very savvy movie. So you can see 100 years, I'm trying to tell you that society has changed a lot. Now, in 1920, when Charlie Chaplin made this movie, he saw society had already changed a lot. Okay? Because till about as I said, till the 1890s or so, people were still living in largely agricultural, partly modern or non-modern societies. Once the Industrial Revolution started, by 1920, a new kind of society came into being in Europe, America, etc., which scholars call mass society. And Modern Times is a great satire on mass society. First shot of the movie, they show sheep, and then they show workers rushing to the factory and this big clock, and just the pressures of modern time, which you can also say secularized Christian time, okay, where the whole universe is seen in terms of one flow, where you have limited time. They don't believe in multiple janmas, right? So they say you have one life to live, in which you have to find the truth, whether that could be the truth of Christian religion, or it could be scientific truth or Darwinian truth. That is kind of the setting. Can you go back? That picture. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. So sorry, you were following. Yeah. Go to the next one. Well done. Thank you. Yeah. So I already mentioned that. So 1920s, this new field called communication research begins, and it started because many scholars and writers and artists started to worry. See, like Charlie Chaplin was worried. He said, what has become to human beings? We are being treated like cattle or like machines. There is so much poverty. There is a Great Depression in America. And of course, there is the war, which he satirized in Great Dictator. So great artists like Charlie Chaplin were also making fun and trying to show us the truth of what is happening in society. Now, at the same time, there was a big concern in America also about this idea of propaganda. That is that famous poster from World War I times, which was used to recruit soldiers, saying Uncle Sam wants you to, leave your nice home and family and go and, fight the Germans in Europe. So in the time of World War I, the US government set up a very big propaganda department. And the way it was organized is incredible. They got everybody, filmmakers, journalists, storytellers, and then they trained these speakers called 4-minute men. So they trained hundreds of people to give just 4-minute speeches about why America should go and fight the war. And they were very effective. So now you can see what's happening in America. From that time, every time somebody wants to make money, some war manufacturer like a gun company or a tank or a warplane company, they'll all get together. They'll find some foreign country they can invade and make money, Iraq, Ukraine, whatever.
And then, they will put their propaganda department to work. And every day, all the papers will say, oh, there is human rights abuse, or this, or that. So they've been doing it for 100 years. Anyway, so at that time, a lot of scholars were worried that propaganda is influencing people and manipulating them. So a lot of scholars came together and started doing research on how media is manipulating people. So, they were always looking for something called magic bullet. So what is the variable if you do experiments, psychological experiments like Pavlov's dog, for example? What are the variables we can find? I'm emphasizing the methodology part again because I'm trying to make a thing called the philosophy. That was the peak philosophy in the Western world, the scientific thinking. They said science worked for us in the physical world. We learned how to fly, we learned how to split the atom. So, can we use science now to control society, to control human beings' thoughts? That's the way they were thinking. And then, the military-industrial complex is a name that I think is very relevant to understanding America and modern society and media. Let's go to the next one.
Sir, what is propaganda?
Thank you. So, propaganda, does anyone want to take a shot? What do you understand? Okay, very simply, the propaganda sounds like propagate, right? To spread some message. But in common usage, when we say propaganda, we mean a statement or a speech or a utterance which is a lie, which somebody is telling. It's a falsehood, which is being done deliberately, okay, to achieve some bad purpose. So, for example, America did propaganda in 2003 about Saddam Hussein having done 9/11. So it was pure propaganda. It was a lie. And Saddam Hussein and Osama bin Laden did it, yes, not Saddam Hussein. So the word propaganda suggests a lie, but it also suggests very organized, highly funded kinds of, lying, brainwashing, manipulation. So I'll give you a small back history on this word. Thank you for asking that question.
Can controversies is included in propaganda? Controversies.
Controversy.
Can controversies are included in propaganda? Controversies.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. I mean, sometimes somebody doing propaganda can purposely cause a controversy, but controversies can happen otherwise. Like, let's say, Anpilo is telling a lie and you're telling the truth. That could be a controversy too, no? So, like that. So, the word propaganda actually comes from Latin. In 1622, the Pope at the time, Pope Gregory, established something called the College of Propaganda. And have you ever heard of this? Okay. So the Pope, the Catholic Church invented propaganda. They're very good at it. So the idea was they would train missionaries to go to the colonies. They would go to America, Caribbean, India, Goa, Kerala, etc., and argue very often with the pundits, the Brahmins, the scholars of the time. Great book by Sitaram Goel called Hindu-Christian Encounters, which documents how some of these debates took place in India at least. So anyway, College of Propaganda, that's where the word comes from. Then by 1920s, because of World War, it became a common word. Everybody started saying, okay, there is something called propaganda which governments are doing or religious organizations are doing, and it's not good. Okay, so we'll just pause, go to the next one. Okay, quick example of the kind of research that was being done. In 1939, I think, Halloween, which is not a real festival, I guess, at least today it's just a commercial festival. American radio hosted a reading of a science fiction novel called War of the Worlds by Orson Welles, who was a great filmmaker. And what happened was, thousands of people who were hearing the program panicked. They thought it was a real news program, that UFO had come and alien was invading and things like that. And then they made fun of us about our Ganeshas drinking milk or about Rama's birthplace. Okay, that's a different story. But anyway, this caused a mass panic in America in 1939. And so some social scientists decided to research who panicked, who did not panic. How do we do it? So it's just a famous example of how sometimes See, most of the time the media's influence is spread out, so it's hard to tell. Okay? So if somebody comes and gives an injection with some sleeping drug or something, you'll fall asleep. Cause effect immediate. Now with mass media, whether it is radio, or television, or cinema, or TikTok, it is hard to tell. It is spreading so much. So that is a challenge. But this was a rare example where there was a mass effect, immediate mass effect. Thousands of people jumped out of their houses, they got into cars, they started driving here and there. And the reason basically was, it was not, in the beginning, the producers said this is a play. But a lot of people tuned into the radio after the beginning, so they missed the announcement. So when they turned on the radio, they thought a news program is going on and they're hearing screams of people who are really being attacked by aliens. So that is a great example. Let's move on. All right, so two kinds of research formed in mass communication. Harold Laswell was the guy who was doing like knowledge for knowledge's sake. George Gallup basically commercialized media research. To this day, we have the same thing in India also. Universities do media research more just for knowledge's sake, but then there are commercial companies, marketing companies, etc. Next one, please. Laswell's model of communication is just in 1948, this professor just said, if you want to understand mass communication, just know this one line. Who says what in which channel to whom with what effect? Okay. So that way you can logically look at it. So let's say you pick up your WhatsApp and you see some message about something X or Y. Who's sending it? What are they saying, etc. And so on and so forth. Next one, please. Let's go ahead. I'm going to skip ahead for time. Is it 11 o'clock yet? Somebody? Oh, there's a clock there. Great. Yeah. So the guru is telling me to keep looking at him also, so I stay on track. Okay, wonderful. Okay, keep going. Let's go to. Let's just pause it. So 1970s, there's a big change in Western academia. Okay? From 1920 to 1970, most of the work is being done by social scientists, which is very empirical, quantitative surveys and experiments. 1970s, there's a big change. There's a big change in Western societies generally, but in academia also, philosophically, people are questioning the old approaches. So some call it postmodernism, post-structuralism, those are all the fields that emerged around that time. In particular, this was very important in media research. A group of scholars in England started a way of studying media, just called cultural studies or critical cultural studies. And their focus was on meaning and power. Okay? The meaning part, I want to share in 2-3 minutes with you, because again, you're learning about some languages and how they work. They started paying attention to the qualitative side of media communication. They started studying like how exactly does language work? Okay, if you read a word, how do you interpret the meaning? Or if you see a movie, how are the different components of the non-verbal cues giving you the meaning? So for example, in a movie, if you suddenly see a close-up, somebody's face, it gives you a different meaning than seeing somebody from a distance, right? So the language of editing, lighting, music, sound, all these things they started studying. Now the interesting thing was, I don't know whether it is good or bad. I think in the beginning it was good, later it became bad. They were also interested in questions of power, meaning political power. So they started saying, so because the media is producing some meanings and not some other meanings, it oppresses some people, like elites, people with power gain from these media stories, these representations. Others are suffering. So those are the two concerns. Okay. So this is an example. When you can recognize this image, you know where it is?
Egypt.
And this is Easter Island. It's called Easter Island. It is a small island somewhere in the Pacific Ocean, where the people who used to live there, like presumably these are their gods. They had these great big statues. By the time the European colonizers went there, I think there was nobody there. So anyway, it's just considered a famous landmark and tourist attraction. Now, a few years ago, 1990s, I think this was in the Week magazine or one of the Indian magazines, had this ad. And this was ad, of course, was in every magazine around the world, Time, Life, Rolling Stone. And I found it very interesting. They put a bottle of, an unsatvic product, and then, they say, there's no slogan also. I don't think there's even a slogan. That's all. It's just an ad. Very effective communication. So I use this example to teach my students about how meaning works. I asked them to describe the meaning or the slogan, and only one word they will always say year after year. Any guesses what the word is? English word. Cool. Sorry. Cool.
Cool.
From 1995 till 2023. Not 22. Last year I was not teaching. I don't know why that word, students have changed so much, technology has changed, culture has changed. Then I tell them to break it down. How exactly did you know to say cool? Or you felt something for which you gave the word cool? Or maybe in India they would say must, or I don't know, in the 90s, in Hyderabad they used to say must. I'm sure Bangalore has a nicer word. Is there a nice Bangalore Kannada word for cool? Sakar. Is it slang or proper? Okay. All right. So they said cool. Then we break it down and we use a theory proposed in the early 1900s by a Swiss linguist called Ferdinand C. Saussure, who was, I think, influenced by Panini's Ashtadhyayi and all that, but now that part nobody acknowledges. Okay? I learned all this stuff without realizing these guys were reading our ancestors' stuff.
You don't know.
Huh?
They acknowledge now.
They acknowledge now. Good. So, Saussure's theory of linguistics was applied to media by scholars like Roland Barthes and others in the 70s. Very simply, they said a sign consists of two parts, signifier and signified. Signifier is the physical aspects of it, like the color, the layout, the text, the objects depicted. Signified is the meaning we give to it. So then we break it down and say, how did you decide this image is cool? And they'll look at it carefully. What are all the signifiers? Okay, only this, all the stone heads are looking stoic, silent, serious. But this one fellow is looking cool, chill, bindas. So, and then we say, break it down. Why? Okay, he's wearing this dark glasses, this and that. Is it? Then there is a bottle. And then I say, consider there could be another meaning. Maybe he had that whole bottle and now he's having headache. So he's saying, so headache. So like that I, tease my students into applying the mind and understanding how semiotics work. Now the key idea about semiotic is meaning is arbitrary. Okay? And I know there's a big philosophical difference between our linguistic traditions and Western. So all these are, basically the idea is meaning is arbitrary, and the only way we make meaning is by using certain codes. And these codes are based on ideology. Somebody's worldview. So then I tell my students, what do you think before the tourists or the photographer came and said, oh, here is some object, we'll make it into an ad for a drink. What do you think these objects are? Some people will say it's a mystery. Somebody else will say, oh, maybe it was some, place where human sacrifices were made. So they're all guessing. Nobody will just say, hey, maybe this was the gods. Right? So now think for a second. Hampi Narasimha Swami, cover of my book, Rearming Hinduism, is one of the few places left on earth where we'll still say Hampi Narasimha Swami, we'll pray to him and miracles keep happening. I don't know, miracle or Mahima, or call it what you will. Amazing things happen. Okay. Now, this also might have been like that to the people there. But for some reason, that is gone. Now, other people are imposing their stories over them. Next slide, please. Okay. Good. So, I'm giving you some examples which are, I think, relevant to us now of using semiotic analysis to pay attention to how we have been depicted, how India, Hinduism, Sanatana Dharma has been depicted in the Western media. So this was the cover of Time magazine. I'm sorry, sometimes people get very upset by this. Time magazine is a very famous global magazine. 1947, to describe partition, okay? They show a picture of I guess it's supposed to be goddess Kali doing this. Any thoughts on this? What is the first thing that you think is wrong? Either,
Suicide or
yeah,
putting
what
a
is
dagger into oneself.
indeed?
She's killing nation, India.
Kali is killing the nation. That is what they are saying. Is that true? Correct. So when you look at the media image critically, that is what I hope you will start doing more after our talk today. Just pay attention. Ask the question: what else, could be said here? What is not being said? What is not being said? Okay. So think about it.
It could be somebody pushing the dagger into this picture.
Into the picture.
Destroying,
Yeah, but they
destroying
don't.
India.
Exactly, but they don't want to do that. Right? They don't want to show Queen Victoria pushing the dagger, or who was the Queen? They're not Victoria.
Well, the West.
British Queen.
The West.
They don't want to show Jinnah pushing the dagger, right? Because they asked for the partition. Great book called Creating a New Medina by Venkat Duripala. Most amazing study of Islamic imperialism and the creation of Pakistan. But they don't show that. They are just repeating a stereotype or a trope, T-R-O-P-E, trope, which is in the media, where they think that anything to do with Hindus means like heathen, pagan, kafir. So, everything is bad, because their gods are all demons. So think about it, Time magazine. That guy who did it may or may not be a devout Christian. He may be very secular, intellectual, etc. But in his mind, whatever the reality on the ground, Hindu gods, Hindu goddesses are to blame. Next one, please. And these are some recent examples. Sorry, they're small. That last cartoon, I don't know if you saw, this was all over WhatsApp 2-3 years ago. In Kerala, some horrible people put a bomb and something, mother, right? That incident. And everybody sharing this thing about Ganesha crying and saying, no, don't give me prasad, no, don't give me naivedi. And I said, what is the connection? Everything, you're bringing back to somehow saying guilt, fault is with our Hindu gods. Indians, Hindus are doing it. So, like that, a lot of different images. That first one is again Goddess Durga, Kamala Harris's face on it. So, a lot of examples like this. Next one, please. So now the tools are used, right, to draw your attention, to tell you what is wrong with the way, say, Hinduism is being shown in media, have largely come from my field, cultural studies, meaning and power. But there is also a problem now in cultural studies today in the West and also in India. If you go to, I think, many big schools in India, you will find that unlike media researchers in any community around the world, like the Arabs, Muslims, African Americans, etc., who are always saying, hey, media is telling wrong things about us, change it. But Hindus, for some reason, and of course some Westerners, now think that for everything Hindus are to blame. So it's a very peculiar thing. So I'm one of the few people who's trying to debate and change that. But anyway, there's a broader problem. What has happened is, because of this new trend from the 1970s called cultural studies, worldwide, everybody is now looking at academics in the pursuit of knowledge as purely political. Okay, so they are no longer saying, how do we know what is truth? I know you probably learned, pramana, inference, witnessing, all so many great traditions of evidence in our philosophy. Western philosophy had some of it. They got some of it from the Greeks, some of it from basically, more mixed Christianity and the Greeks together. Something they came up with. They got science. All of that was great. But by the 1980s and 90s, they forgot about truth. For them, truth is not about facts or evidence. Truth is only about your identity. Are you victim or oppressed? And who decides? No need for evidence to decide whether you're victim or oppressed. Okay. So that is the big problem. There is identity politics, relativism. So a lot of problems are taking place. Let's go ahead and wrap up in 2-3 minutes. So yes, a lot of propaganda about Hindus in Western Academy. The first book is about the Ram Janmabhoomi movement. In all these books, they never talk about something very simple, that these gods and their devotees and the scholars were all here. and we know it. But instead, they all pretend that there was no temple there. They pretend that there was a beautiful masjid until 1992. Some fanatics watched mythology on television and went mad and broke it down. My God, every few minutes I feel like sharing stories, but I'll save it for later. The third book, Clash Within, is by Martha Nussbaum, Amartya Sen's colleague or friend. She wrote it after 9/11, basically saying, stop worrying about Al-Qaeda, the real danger is BJP. Yeah. So, anyway, keep looking. Yeah. So, mind that phrase, sorry, please go back one more time. Jews, Brahmins, Hindus. So, what has happened now is in the world today, one of the reasons these students in America reacted the way they did to this whole Hamas terrorism is now everybody is just convinced that there are good guys, bad guys, whites, Jews, Brahmins, Hindus, broadly, are all the bad guys, they're the oppressors. Everyone else is oppressed. Okay? So let's keep going. Hold on to that thought. This is an article which said that Amar Kshetra Kada is very oppressive and whatever. Just keep lying. Keep going. So this is just an article I wrote, I'll share the link later, called Hindu Nationalism or Hindu Phobia. It's I think one of the first peer-reviewed articles proposing that Hindu phobia is a real concern in media studies. And I propose a methodology for studying it. Next one, please. So I talk about different ways at which media researchers can study media. What are the indicators, like, you use, what are the tropes, etc., stereotypes. Next one, let's just look at examples real quick. Next one. So just some quick examples of how media analysis works. These are 0.2, 0.5 in my coding table. So this is examples I saw. One is from the DNA newspaper, something else. In both these crime news, in both these cases, the culprits were not Hindus, okay, the criminals. But here the headline says Tantric, okay, Tantra, Amavaru, goddess, but they just used Tantric when the guy who did it was somebody else. Same thing, there also the first picture you see, they put a very evil-looking, Hindu priest with saffron and markings. And again, the crime news, is some padre or somebody else, Norwegian or somebody who did it. But you've seen it, I'm sure. How many of you have seen examples like this? Lies in the headlines. Okay, very common. Next one, please. Next. Very important one. So this is point 12. PK, yes, you recognize that. You recognize the other movie. This is Slumdog Millionaire on the right. Yeah, another horrible propaganda movie. Just imagine the movie came out same time, 26/11, attacks on Bombay took place. So this is a common trope. Next one. Next one actually you should see. So this is a common trope. This idea that Hinduism is a stagnant religion. And somebody writes, Hindus must show solidarity to Muslims by converting. Okay, keep going. So just a lot of examples. Yeah, this is from a Telugu movie on Adi Shankara. This trope of this fat priest who is oppressing Adi Shankara. And on the left, there's a Facebook page called Saffron Terrorism. Ask my students, how do you actually interpret these guys as terrorists? What are they doing? And they look. Are they carrying a gun? No. Are they carrying a knife? Are they carrying a banner saying death to non-Brahmins or something? No. They're sitting and doing their,
Chanting.
Sorry?
They're just chanting.
They're chanting. But see the power of manipulation. Now that is stuck in so many people's head. Oh my God, saffron terrorism. See, propaganda. Every day, so many people doing it. Next, please. Next. Yeah, this was a big controversy in America. This lady, Furkan Khan, was the Delhi correspondent for a bit, the most important national radio channel in America, NPR. And she tweeted and just said Indians should give up Hinduism. So they keep talking about all these dirty things, The terrorist in Pulwama also used that phrase about cow and urine, So this has become normal now in the West. So a lot of research is being done. Well, not a lot, just a small handful of us who are just saying this is dangerous. Next one, please. Keep going. That's just my definition. Okay, conclusion. Last 2 minutes. and then we can have some questions for 10 minutes, I think. Please remember, media is powerful, communication has consequences, but finally, those of you, you are now in a very important moment, as I said earlier today. You are studying Sanskritam, Indic knowledge systems, all these things, but you're in a world where so much propaganda is stacked. There is a lot of media today. Everybody, your mothers, your grandparents, everybody's using the phones, things are happening. Before it gets too much, we have to figure it out. Okay? So these are some thoughts on how I think you can take this forward. Just 3 more slides, I think. Next one. Okay, please remember this image. You recognize this picture on the right.
Palghar, is it? Palghar.
This was the murder of the sadhus in Palghar.
Today morning there was news.
What happened?
In West Bengal, they are hitting sadhus.
Very sad, very sad. So this is happening. See, cause effect. So what is happening? See, the fellow who's actually hitting or killing a sadhu may or may not be influenced by one tweet or one news headline. Yes, but millions of people, including your friends, your classmates, particularly in Mahanagars like Bengaluru, Hyderabad, and San Francisco, London, New York, New Delhi, they won't believe you. When you say, my God, did you know a sadhu was attacked in Bengal today? They won't believe you. They'll say, oh, this is BJP IT cell propaganda. You know? So this is the tragedy of our times, that's what has happened to the Jews in America today, poor fellows. Whatever, their history, their problems. I mean, they've been dealing with a difficult situation and they get slaughtered and now everybody's blaming them, saying they're doing genocide on Palestine, So anyway, so media's consequences, dehumanization is dangerous. Next one, please. This was a picture from the 1971 Bangladesh genocide of Hindus. For a long time I did not even know that they targeted Hindus in Bengal. Again, power of propaganda. Next one, please. Okay. 2 more minutes. I will tell you very crisply. Okay, I'll try to bring 2 things. My field is not your field. Social sciences, trained in Western academia, but very concerned about how Hinduism is misportrayed in the media around the world and in universities. Okay? So I want to talk about the challenges in my world and what I think might be some challenges in your field of study. Okay? The challenge today in the mainstream culture for Hindus or for Bhartiyas is mainstream culture, media, education, schools, colleges, social science is dominated by propaganda. Okay? Propaganda is designed to break intergenerational continuity. That is one weapon in propaganda. They're all the time trying to make us hate the past. Okay? That's what has happened to a lot of Jewish children in the West. Now the challenge in Sanskrit studies and IKS and all, last few weeks I'm seeing everybody's talking about IKS in India, which in some ways is good, exciting. But there are some challenges which I read Acharya Pandurangji's paper on challenges for Sanskrit studies. It was very interesting. The first thing is there is philosophical weight. What you're carrying, what you're learning and carrying has weight. It's not easy. Now, if you want to just learn something which gets you a job, it's easy. What you're carrying is something, that knowledge is making you think about reality, the nature of the self, so many profound questions, so that is good. Then the other big challenge he pointed out is the need for dialogues like this, where you have this generationally preserved knowledge, but then most of the world today is not having that knowledge and they don't even care for it. So how do you bridge that gap? More dialogues. So I think we have a challenge with siloization. Silo is a word, means like a long deep hole, like a borewell hole. Actually, we should say borewell hole. So, Sanskrit studies should not be like sitting in a borewell. Even if you have beautiful knowledge, it's only you. So it has to reach other people. For that we need media, we need to know how to communicate. Next one. So I have one quick solution. I keep talking about this idea called vertical, horizontal. All it means is, most of society today has been transformed by colonialism, Christianity, Islam, capitalism into a horizontal society, where people are brainwashed into not thinking about their ancestral culture, etc. They want people to think there is only one lifetime. They want people to hate their ancestors and forget about the past, so that then they become good, obedient workers, consumers, etc. But we still have this vertical. which means we have ancestral memory, trying to live in horizontal times. Next one. So this is just a quick slide I made. Maybe later if you watch the video, you can, there's too much to go through, I'll lose time. I'm just talking about the generational constellation, which means today, if you look at your own families, there may be 4 or 5 generations only present. Okay? The oldest are people born in say 1930s, 40s. Okay, maybe your grandparents. Then your parents' generation, you and maybe your younger siblings. So just 4 or 5 generations. And between each generation, okay, forces have acted. Macaulay.
But their propaganda may also maybe supporting violence, etc., which counter propaganda may not do so. We may not support violence. So,
That is
what
true.
is the solution?
No, that is a very good point. The question, please listen once. So see, the other side is doing propaganda not only with words but with deeds. You know, there used to be a saying, propaganda of the deed means terrorism. They've been doing it. Our side hardly, does things
We
like
don't
that.
even lift a blade.
Yeah, so lift your voice, lift your mind. Okay. Let's start with that. Even Gandhi, for all his mistakes and faults, he was brave. He put his body on the line, he did mass action. Now in America, in the American Hindu community, I will share 1 or 2 thoughts. One of the problems is they are so high on economic success. There was a time, oh yeah, we are rich, we have such a good name, nothing can happen to us. See, we are building so many temples. I don't know if you're reading the news, how many Hindu temples are getting attacked?
Yes.
Bay Area, Canada, Australia, England. Now, I don't know at what point these guys will actually decide what to do, and maybe too little, too late. But again, I have faith in gods and gurus. So, but I think at least start lifting voices. And we should not be complacent. We should not be just saying, "Hey, we are rich. Our economy is growing. Modi ji is in charge. Sab theek hai." No. So we have to. What we can't do, maybe with knives and daggers and all that stuff. At least in spirit, we have to cultivate.
So there's one point, now, even though the title is Media Studies and Philosophy, I understand the background of the philosophical thinking and how the media studies are progressing. But you did mention that there are, looking at knowledge for a political tool as knowledge as power is possibly what most of the Western academia has been developing in. So epistemologically, is there a problem because of that approach? And even if there is a response to that in the same way, would that go against the very epistemological foundations of Indian thought, where power or mass understanding is not a tool for truth seeking? So therefore, even if there is a mass communication, would that actually counter the very approach of Indian way of looking at truth?
Wonderful question.
But before the question and answer, we need to shift the venue to the next one. We will continue the discussion there.